Hey, this is Craig from the Device Integrations team at Tealium, and welcome to this short video on consent management with the Tealium Swift SDK. Here I have a Tealium IQ profile containing two tags. One falls into the analytics category, and the other falls into the search category. Without the consent manager in place, these tags would run only according to the load rules that are configured on each tag. However, with consent management enabled, the user must also have indicated their consent to be tracked, otherwise no tags would run. For this demo, we need to configure the Consent Preferences dialog, which allows users to consent to tracking by individual tag categories. If you are not using the Tag Management module in your app, you may skip this section of the configuration and jump to part 2 of the video, which focuses on the Swift code that you need to implement inside your app. Now we're going to add the Consent Preferences dialog from the My IQ tab. This sets up the bridge that allows the Swift Consent Manager module to set the consent status and categories in Tealium IQ. It's not necessary to customize the text that appears here, since the UI is not going to be rendered in your app. All we need to do in this case is save and publish once we've added the Consent Preferences Manager. Now we're going to look at how to configure the Consent Manager in our sample app. In the sample app, I have 3 separate view controllers, each showing a different method of configuring the Consent Manager. The first view allows the user to select their consent preferences by category. For example, a user may choose to allow analytics but not to allow display advertising. Once the user has selected their preferences, we will see the app making a call to the Consent Manager API, which will store the user's consent preferences for future app launches and apply the preferences to all future tracking calls sent to Tealium. The Tealium helper file included with the Consent Manager sample app contains a number of helper functions that call the Consent Manager API to store and retrieve the user's preferences. Here we can see that the app passed a consent status of consented and 2 consent categories of affiliates and email. Now we're going to close the app and show that the user's previously set consent preferences have been persisted. Next, we're going to look at a different approach designed to simplify the experience for the end user. In this example, we have created 4 category groupings: not consented, performance, marketing, and personalized advertising, designed to go from least permissive on the left to most permissive on the right. You can see here that I have defined my consent groups in 3 arrays, each containing the list of categories for that group. When I change my preferences, you can see the new settings in the consent_categories array. To keep things even simpler, you may wish to just allow your app's users to consent or decline all tracking, with no possibility for refinement. This is possible by just passing a consent status to the Consent Manager with no list of categories, as shown here. Finally, we're going to show what happens if the consent status is reset. Once the reset API is called, all previously stored data about the user's consent preferences is cleared, and the Consent Manager returns to its default state. This state will remain until the user once again consents to or declines tracking. In this example, we can see that the default state of the Consent Manager has been restored, and tracking calls are queued until the user consents or declines. I hope that you have found this video a useful introduction to mobile consent management. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask on the Tealium Learning Community at community.tealiumiq.com.